Good morning, Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty, broker for 40 years in Silicon Valley. We're here to talk about the real estate in Silicon Valley and then the Greater Bay Area at the very end. Here are the slides that we're going to be talking about. Some of the unique features of my data as we look at list price. That gets you in there without the delay of escrow. We look at percentiles, 10 percentile, 90 percentile, whatever is most appropriate for the data set we're looking at. We're comparing the 10-year median to and expectations to the current data, so you don't have to adjust for seasonal adjustments because real estate is very cyclic. We use a 5-week moving period instead of a month, so that gives you data through Friday night at midnight. So let's get into the data, and here we go. First slide is a summary slide of what we're going to be going over to give you some idea quickly, and these are current market conditions. We'll jump right into the heat map and come back to this at the end. Now what we're doing is looking at the active listings, and we're comparing the number of active listings currently to the 10-year median for that same geographical area. So you can see there's a shortage of listings in Santa Clara County. San Mateo County is just about a balanced, right about where you'd expect it to be. And unfortunately, I do not have Alameda County. I will hopefully have that for next week. This is the same concept, but on the other side, the flip side, the number of offers. The number of offers are also reduced, but the offers being reduced favors the buyer, therefore everything's blue. In this case, you can see that the Santa Clara County and the bulk of San Mateo County is a pretty dark blue, which means we're selling significantly less listings than we normally do. The only area that's sort of in a balanced marketplace is right along the Santa Clara, San Mateo County border, and as well as Cupertino and Sunnyvale. Moving on now, we look at days of unsold inventory, and we look at that, which is the ratio between the active listings and the sales, which is far more important than either one individually. And here you'll see that Santa Clara County is in a hot marketplace, San Mateo County is in a cool marketplace. And again, I don't have the data for Alameda County, hopefully next week. Now we're looking at instead of comparing it to the 10-year median, we're looking at the raw numbers, and the raw numbers of DUI, days of unsold inventory, which is the speed of the marketplace. We can judge what the market's doing based just on the raw number. Basically, anything from roughly 40 days to 80 days is what I consider to be a balanced market. Anything above 80 is going to be an ice cold buyer's market. Anything below 40 is a red hot seller's marketplace. So you can see the vast majority of Santa Clara County and Alameda County is bright red, and that's because you have a fast marketplace. And if you look, Santa Clara County is basically 25 days. Alameda County is something like 21 days. San Mateo County is in the red, but much slower. It's somewhere around 38-40 days, right sort of on that threshold, which is why some areas like the coast and the North San Mateo area are white, and then along the peninsula, along the bay side, is the slight shade of red. So right off the bat, this is the supply-demand balance. Both the supply and the demand are way down, but since they're down in the ratio they're down, it still favors the seller. This is days on market 75th percentile. The reason I use the 75th percentile is to eliminate the seller that's on the market for a year and sells, it really brings up your average, but really doesn't impact the market much. Basically, this comes pretty close to mirroring the average with eliminating that downside. The median itself is a bad number because it's a whole number and it fluctuates and is much lower, and it jumps, so you really don't know graduations of the marketplace. In other words, going from 7 to 8 days is actually a fairly significant thing. Here, going 14 to 15 days is not as significant. 75 days was a real nice compromise, and again, you can see the redder areas are the faster paced areas, the fainter shades of pink are the slower areas. And basically what you'll see throughout this presentation is the impact of COVID. What used to be desirable properties very close to the work center at high premiums, the premiums now are less, and the outlying areas that were less desirable because the longer commutes are now more desirable because people are only commuting into the work once or twice a week instead of 5 times a week. This looks at the average price reduction, and this is important because now you're seeing what the market's doing without needing to wait for escrows to close. This is a data point that's available as soon as the offer is accepted. And again, you can see Alameda County is red hot, which means they're taking very little price reductions. In fact, when you look at the numbers here, most of them are at or above 100%, 99.9, 98.9, 99.6, 99.7, and those are white. But you got 3 areas in Alameda County that are 100% or above, 2 areas or above. Santa Clara County is pretty much white, which means it's right around 99%, 99 and a quarter, basically 98 to 99 and a quarter, very tight data point. So there's not much of a range, but it's still very valuable for what it does tell you. Up in San Mateo County, you have a range from a real hot to a light blue to a light pink, depending on what area you're looking at. Now we're looking at the frequency of price reductions. Again, not very many sellers take a price reduction. Sellers do their homework before they put the property on the market. And with most properties selling in 14 or 21 or 28 days, there isn't time for price reductions. So price reductions are very uncommon, which gives you the red color. Red is saturated red at 5%, becomes completely white at 16.7%. From 16.7 to 20% is white, and from 20% to 33% is the shades of blue. You can see that the outlying areas are pretty red. The inlying areas are where the market is sort of a balanced marketplace, sort of the price reductions you'd expect, somewhere right around 18, 17, 20% price reductions. And that's free, not 17% off the asking price, but 17, 20% of the sellers taking any sort of a price reduction. Now we're flipping over from what the sellers are doing to attract the offers to what the buyers are doing when they write the offers. So these are overbids, or in a real slow marketplace, underbids, but you can see that we have a pale shade of pink throughout the region, including even in San Mateo County and many of the areas. The only area that doesn't have any pink is right along the expensive areas in San Mateo, Santa Clara County border. But in general, what you have here is a little bit of overbidding, but because we went through a market correction fairly recently, buyers are more reserved in how much they overbid. So the numbers are fairly conservative, right around 5% overbidding. Sort of the exception is Alameda County and Berkeley up here in Alameda County at 117%, and even Oakland at 112%. Everybody else is much closer to 105%. On the flip side, San Mateo County coast is at 98.7, which is a very fine shade of blue. I can see the outline that there's a color there, but I can't, to me, it almost looks like it's neutral, but apparently it's a very slight shade of blue. Here's the frequency of overbidding, how common is overbidding, and you can see again the outlying areas are the areas where it's the deepest blue. The areas in sort of in the job center are sort of the neutral, the white color, which means there were right around 50% of the sellers. Basically 50 to 95% is where you get pink. From 33 to 50% you're white, and from 15 to 33%, and nobody's in that category. In fact, the lowest I think you have is 48%, and that may even be 48%. Oh, see 45% up here in South County. Looking at appreciation, this is appreciation since the last 9 months of 2015. That was a period of time when prices were pretty stable. The outlying areas have had the highest appreciation. Typically, the areas that have had the highest appreciation most recently have the highest appreciation over the longest period of time because of compounding. The areas that have the least appreciation, again, are right there along the Santa Clara, San Mateo County border, where there's a lot of high-priced homes, and also the job centers used to be right there. Used to be a very desirable place to work if you had to commute into work every day. Now we're looking at sold prices. This is just to give you an idea what price range you're in. And instead of just tracking the median number, which is what assigns the color on the map, I also look at the 10 percentile and the 90 percentile. So you know that 80% of the homes are between the two numbers on the left and the right, the left being the cheapest, the right being the most expensive, and the middle number being the median. Here we go back to the summary, so you can pick your geographical area on the left and see what the market conditions are, or pick your sale price, your affordability price, or you can even do it based on price. So in South County, the cheapest you're going to be able to buy a single family home is about $1 million a month. The median is 1.4, and that would be $1,400 a month. And the most expensive would be $2,300 per month. Now we're looking at the sort of the three major components of real estate, and actually it's only two. It's inventory, which is the purple line. So in purple line right now, you're at 62% of the inventory you'd expect based on the past 2 years. The other one is demand, the orange line down here, and you're at 61% of the demand you'd expect. The demand is a little bit lower, the number of offers, and these are based on the 10-year median. The DUI you would expect is at 94%. And each one of these is happening in a different year. In other words, the median active listings, the median number of offers happen in different years, and the median DUI happened in a different year. So they don't line up, which is why the ratio of these individual numbers does not equal 94%. But it gives you an idea of where you expect each component. Each component, even though they're linked, they're independent and can have their median, their high and their low in different years. This is a table that I think is of somewhat significance. To me, it shows a data set that people aren't really talking about it, and that's the record low volume. The deeper highlighted blue is the record low. Yes, the record low was back here in 2020, but that was when we couldn't even show properties, and the current year was the second worst year. I think the lock it down was so unusual. I think it's important to eliminate that. And then if you look at the percentage, it's sort of all in line. Not only are we at a record low, but we're 72% of the previous record low in the past 25 years. So you look at your lowest number of offers accepted in 25 years, we're only selling 72%. People really aren't talking about that, and it's in large part because there isn't much seller activity. But if seller activity was anywhere close to normal and we had the buyers coming only in at 72%, we'd rapidly have a change in the marketplace. This looks at payments. You can see payments were very constant for a long period of time. They ran up in 2021. They shot up in early 2022. Potentially this shoot up in payments that helped trigger the slowdown, but the slowdown actually started right here, right around Valentine's Day, which is just about when payments started to go up. But people didn't realize the market turned, in my opinion, until closer to May. So the market turned actually much earlier, and we'll see this throughout the slides that don't have lag times in them. Here's your ask price reductions. What we're starting off as a year ago, and then you have a monthly curve, and when we get to 3 months, we change over and do weekly. So you have 12 weeks of weekly data. And what you do is you just step through, and you can see each week it's really slowing down and improving, slowing down again, and now improving, and now sort of stable, improving, stable, improving, and improving. And this is the current week. The purple and the green are very similar. There's a change up here, but there's only 3 days difference out of 35 between this. I use a real estate fiscal year, which starts on March the 1st of every year and then jumps forward 7 days at a time to get a week sample so that you have the same number of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. And the sample's currently ending on Wednesday, and that's the data up here. And then to give you the most current data through Friday, that's the green line. And Microsoft is, instead of drawing straight data points between these, because I only have a data point at each one of the vertical lines, it sort of brings in this roundingness. So basically what's happened is there's been a 2.5% shift in the 3 days. So not dramatic not as much shift as the graph would indicate, in my opinion. Now we're flipping over and looking at what buyers do. Same concept. You have the best week ever up here, the worst week down here. This is exactly a year ago, and we're going to step in and we're going to step down fairly quickly. Now we hit the bottom and bottomed out for a while. Now we started improving. And you can see small steps, but in the general direction. And then we've had several weeks of stability. And I believe that stability is about ready to turn around and start reversing and going back down. No way to know for sure until the data is available, but that would be what I would expect to happen. Here's your active listings. You can see we have the least number of active listings that you would expect. The least you'd expect is 1703. We're at 1722. That's a match. This is where you'd expect inventory to be at 2700. So you're missing about 1,000 units available for sale. And the most you'd expect is 3315, and that's based on the 10-year 90 percentile, 10-year median, and 10-year 10 percentile. So 80% of the times you're going to be between the blue line and the red line. Right now you're right at the red line. You can see that we were below it, and that's the 10% of the times that you're below. But it gives you sort of an expectation range. Same thing on the number of offers. Here the number of offers is below where you'd expect it to be. The 10% number is 2250. Here we are at 1800. So you're short by 450 listings. That's fairly significant. That's something like 20% below the lowest you'd expect it to be. And you can see that the upper numbers have typically rolled over at this point. The lower number is still climbing at this point. This is days on sold inventory. This is how quickly the market's going. And again, because both the demand and the offers, both the active listings and the offers are low, the DUI is just about exactly where you'd expect it to be. The range is pretty tight from 30 to 40, and we're sitting here at 34. Actually, we're sitting at 33, with 34 being what you'd expect. So we're very close to the expectation on the speed of the market. As far as the pressure for a buyer to act quickly, that's the typical for this valley at this time of the year. And here is showing that. You can see in 2021 and early 2022, DUI was lower, which is a faster paced marketplace. It was half, so it was twice as quick. Right now, we're essentially right at where you'd expect it to be. Here's the 75th percentile. This is easier for some consumers to understand. This is what I call the long typical seller. How long would it take the successful seller to sell that doesn't sell immediately? And that number is 15 days. So that's basically 2 weeks. Being on the market for 2 weeks, 3/4 of your sellers are selling already. Only 25% are taking longer than 2 weeks. You can see the range is from 13 to 23 days. This is where you're a little faster. You're at 88% of what you expect the market to be at this time, so a little quicker than normal. Ask price reductions. This is an interesting chart because this is one of the ones that eliminates the delay time in getting what the sale price is, because you're looking at just simply what the ask price is. And again, the red line up here is where you'd expect it, how you'd expect the data to behave if it was a fantastic market. The black line is the typical, and the blue line is the coolest marketplace. And notice that the blue line rolled over a little while ago, the gray line is even earlier, and the red line is even earlier in the year. When you have a really hot marketplace, it seems that the shift happens earlier than if you're having a cold marketplace. But it looks like the purple line has been coming up fairly consistently, as you can see, and now it looks like the line is rolled over. And yes, it's rolled over in the past, but when you add in the fact that all these other lines are on the downslope, and you can come back here and see where it continues based on the 10-year trend, I expect the purple line to continue to go down. Again, there's no way to know what the data will actually be next week on Friday, but my expectation would be, because the typical pattern is for it to be down, even lower. Here's your ask price reduction. So right now it's 110% of typical. So sellers are taking slightly greater price reductions than they normally do. This is the frequency of ask price reductions. So this is how often are sellers taking price reductions. And again, the number on the purple line appears to have bottomed out and going up. And again, one data point in a new direction would not normally set off alarms at all for me. But if you come back here and look at what the pattern is, typically it's right here, which is the beginning of second quarter, where the frequency of price reduction starts increasing. So you'd expect it to be increasing here when it was still clearly going down. But now that you've had an increase, it would probably continue to go up. But I could have said the same thing back here, where the market turned exactly when it was supposed to. So the real question is, why did we have this little extra increase here? But at some point, it will most likely start following the typical pattern. No guarantee, just what I would expect it to do. Here's the frequency of reductions, and you can see it's been coming down versus typical. So right now we're having fewer price reductions than normal. Here's the average overbid. This is what the buyers do. We flipped over from what the sellers did to get the offer in, to entice the offer in. Now we're looking at what the buyers do to try to get their offer accepted. On the low side is 4% above the seller's asking price. Right now we're at 6%. Normally we're at 6.7% above. And the best would expect is 12.5% above. Now, of course, when we have an exceptional year, you go above your expectations, and we were north of 18. I think it was 18.5% above the seller's asking price on average. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is it? And right now, you're not quite up to a typical marketplace, but you're pretty far away from a cool marketplace, and we're far away from a hot marketplace. And again, at this time of the year, you can see that most of those numbers are starting, the 10-year pattern is starting to roll over. So the fact that this is rolling over doesn't surprise me. But again, it would all be indicating a cooling of the marketplace potentially. Here's looking at the long-term appreciation on log scale. And the advantage of this is the straight line through here shows you have a pretty constant rate of appreciation of homes over the long run. Yes, there's fluctuations. If you bought here and sold here, you'd be losing money. But reverse, if you bought here and sold up here, you'd be making more money. But typically when you buy back here and you sell here, because real estate's a long-term investment, you've done pretty well. But trying to buy at the valley and trying to sell at the peak is obviously a good thing. The other thing that you need to be aware of is notice there's a drop at the end of every year, and that's just because the areas that are more expensive tend to shut down more for the end of the year holidays than the more affordable areas that tend to keep more going. So the more affordable areas become a bigger share of the marketplace. Even though the median price is dropping, doesn't mean that property values drop that much. Yes, property values probably do decrease, but not as dramatically as this number does. It would suggest, and that's because the shift in the market triggered by the holidays. Here's looking at the same data, but now instead of looking at Silicon Valley as a whole, we're breaking it up and looking at the 3 counties that make up Silicon Valley. So this is active listings. You have San Mateo County being the lowest number of active listings because it's the smallest county. But the takeaway here is it's about the same level as you'd expect it to be, where Santa Clara County and Alameda County are very similar, and they're typically very similar, but they're typically up here around 1,400. So they've gone from 1,400 down here to somewhere around 600. That's a pretty significant drop, and that's what we were seeing. Same thing with offers. San Mateo has seen a drop. It's at 325 listings, essentially, down from something like maybe 550 listings. It's lost 125 listings, so it's lost about a little bit more than a third of its listings. And you go up into Alameda County and Santa Clara County, and let's just say they're 700, and they're normally up here at 1,200, so they've lost 500. So they've lost about a third in rough numbers. Fairly significant drop across the board in the number of offers accepted. Now we're looking at days of unsold inventory. You're seeing Santa Clara County at 29, the fastest paced marketplace, followed by Alameda County at 32, and then San Mateo County at 44. 44 is still a respectable marketplace. It would be a balanced marketplace, but still slightly on the seller's side. 29 days and 32 days are strong sellers marketplaces. Here is looking at the 75th percentile time on the marketplace, days on the marketplace. This is what it takes the long typical seller. So in Santa Clara County, it's taking a little less than 2 weeks. Alameda County, a little more than 2 weeks. And in San Mateo County, essentially 3 weeks in order to sell the property. This is the magnitude of price reductions. San Mateo County is doing the biggest price reductions at 0.9%, followed by Santa Clara County at 0.5%, and then Alameda County at 0.4%. That's average, with the vast majority of the sellers taking no reduction at all. And that's what we're seeing here is the frequency of reductions. Alameda County and Santa Clara County are both taking about 9% of the sellers are taking a price reduction, so 1 out of 10 sellers. In San Mateo County, it's 15%, so 1 out of 7. This is the magnitude of overbidding. So this is looking at the buyer side of the equation. How much are the buyers overbidding in order to try to secure the property? 3% in San Mateo County, 5% in Santa Clara County, and 9% in Alameda County. Keep in mind that's the average, so the median would typically be lower than that. Average gets pulled up by the few people that go in at 25 and 35 and 50% above asking price. Here's the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? 60% in San Mateo County, 65% in Santa Clara County, and 75% in San Mateo County, in Alameda County. You can see the rapid increase. And again, this is what the market did roughly 5 weeks ago because of the delay of escrow. And then we go back 5 weeks in time. This is looking at where the market was 5 to 10 weeks ago, not just right now, which is the huge advantage of looking at list price reductions. Here's the appreciation since 2015. You have Alameda County down here at 169%. You have San Mateo County at 174%, and Santa Clara County is doing the best at 190%, 188%. Here's the price terms on log scale, and the horizontal lines to give you where you go back in time. In San Mateo County, you got the current number here at $2 million, and you can see you were up a little bit from where you were in the latter half of 2021. In Santa Clara County, you're up quite a bit more than you were in 2021, and in Alameda County, you're a little bit below where you were in 2021. The advantage of doing this is you can come back here and do your CMA here, and then make adjustments up or down versus on a period of time when you've gone through cycles like this that have been fluctuating dramatically. Any particular property has a greater chance of not being at market value with these huge changes in price than a period of time when prices were fairly stable. When the prices are stable, it's much easier to determine what the market value is. Here's the same information on analog paper or regular paper if people prefer. And then this is looking at the estimated 30-year payment for those particular homes. And you can see that in 2022, payments started to go up fairly dramatically and were increasing even while the market was decreasing. But they were also increasing while the market was increasing. So I'm not sure it was a payment-driven change. Here's actually the raw data. If someone likes to look at the numbers, you can come over here and pick the category you want. You can look at the Silicon Valley combined. You can add in each individual counties. With that, we're leaving Silicon Valley and we're now going to look at the Greater Bay Area. In the Greater Bay Area, we add in Silicon Valley as one region, San Francisco and Marin's region 2, the North Bay is region 3, fourth region is what I call Central Valley, and the fifth region is Santa Cruz and Monterey, the Central Coast. We could include a whole lot more areas in the Central Valley, but these are the areas that a lot of people commute to in and out of Silicon Valley, so they impact what's happening in the Bay Area, which is how I selected them. We're going to start off with the numbers in case someone's a number-driven person, and then we're going to get right into the graphs. The big takeaway on this slide is look at the dramatic decrease in inventory for North Bay and Central Valley. It's been up here around 5,000, and now it's down here around 16, 17, 1,800. Silicon Valley has gone down, but not nearly as dramatically because it's now at the same level as these, and you can see historically Silicon Valley is significantly less. And then the other two, being the San Francisco and the Central Coast, have come down as well, but not as much as the North Bay and Central Valley. They've seen the biggest decrease in available listings. This is looking at the offers. You can see we're pretty close. We're all grouped together, pretty close together now. Same thing with the other two being the city, San Francisco and the Central Coast. This is days unsold inventory. So you can see the fastest area is typically Silicon Valley by quite a bit. Right now, you can see that the Central Valley and the North Bay has sort of caught up to Silicon Valley, and the Central Coast is basically still in last place, but has improved slightly. If you look at typically Central Valley Coast might be somewhere around 80 days, and right now it's at 60. So it's improved quite a bit for itself, but it hasn't changed order. It's more significant when you see something like San Mateo County being from the second best, second fastest to the second slowest. Those kinds of shifts are noteworthy, and I believe that's COVID related. Here's the 75th percentile of days on marketplace. Santa Clara County, Silicon Valley is clearly the fastest at 15 days. The other four regions are pretty close between basically 4 and 5 weeks, 28 to 35 days. Now we're looking at the sellers reducing their asking price in order to entice the offer to come in. You can see these numbers are very close to 100%, so very small price reductions. Basically 1.6% for San Francisco Marin. 1.4% for Central Coast, 0.8% for North Bay, and then basically right on top of one another, Central Valley is at 0.6%, and finally doing the best is Silicon Valley at 0.5% reduction. This is such a very number that's always going to be close to 100% because most sellers do their homework before they list the property, so their homes are priced pretty close to market value, and so they don't have to do price reductions. Also, with a fast-paced marketplace, even if they miss the mark, the offer comes in a little bit, comes in quick enough that they haven't had time to do a price reduction. This is the frequency of price reductions. 10% of Silicon Valley sellers are doing price reductions. Central Coast is the lighter blue up here, where something like 17% of the sellers are doing price reductions. Most of the areas are really close together, 15.5% to 17%. You can see there's 4 areas grouped real close together there, 15.5% to I think it's 17.0%. Less than 1 out of 5 sellers in all 5 regions are taking a price reductions, and in Silicon Valley, it's 1 in 10 sellers are doing any sort of a price reduction. Now we change from looking at price reductions to looking at the overbids. This is what buyers do to try to ensure that they get the property. This is the magnitude of their overbidding. In the Central Coast, they're under 100%. So they're pretty much doing a little bit of a price reduction. Central Valley is at 1.3% above. North Bay is at 2.5% above. Silicon Valley is 6.3% above. And San Francisco and Marin is at 6.5% above. And that's on average. It gets pulled up based on the sellers that are the buyers that come in at 25% above, for example. The median would be another number, but that is closer to 100% and doesn't change as much. And that's why I look at the average for this particular metric. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? Silicon Valley, 2/3 of the sellers get more than their asking price. San Francisco, 60%. Central Valley and North Bay is basically at 55% for both of them and 41% for Central Coast. Let's look at the total appreciation. The most noteworthy thing is San Mateo County pulled away on the negative side. They have the lowest appreciation. That's basically happening right here with the pandemic, with the fact that it's not so necessary to live close to work because people aren't commuting in every day, and therefore they've appreciated less overall, and most of that separation occurred starting with the pandemic. Overall, the best appreciation is basically the Central Valley and also even the Central Coast. Basically, three of them, Silicon Valley in the purple, Central Valley in the yellow, and Central Coast are very close together with the overall best appreciation. And again, most of that pull away has been since the pandemic. You can see that Silicon Valley had a couple good years before the pandemic in 2018. And sort of in the middle of the pack is Napa, the North Bay area at 68% appreciation. Here's the payments for the different areas, and that would be an estimated monthly payment. And that brings us to an end of this week. Unless I have any questions, let me explain the URLs. The green URL takes you to the archive on YouTube where you can look at all the past episodes. If you want to participate on the live presentation and ask questions, you're free to join me at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. You type in this URL, which is the green plus the year 2023. So look at the handout. You put in the green URL, the letter H for handout, and the year, month, date code 2023-06-03. And for any specific past episode, you put in 2023-06-03, replacing the month and date you're looking for. With that, I'm open for any questions. Not seeing any questions. Everyone have a great week. See you next week. Take care. Bye for now.